An implication is something that is just as true as something that is stated explicitly, but you have to reason to it. For instance, when Socrates stated, "All men are mortal, Socrates is a man," what's the implication? Well, therefore, Socrates is mortal. The Pythagorean theorem, it gives us something similar to that. It says that a squared plus b squared equals c squared on a right triangle. Now, if you have a squared being the one side of the triangle 3, and then the other side of the triangle being 4, then what is the hypotenuse? Well, it's not written out for you, but it shows us that 5 is the answer there. It's not stated explicitly, but it's implied. Now, something that's implied is just as true as something that is explicit. So what does that have to do with atheism and free will? Simply this, that if there is no God, there is an implication involved in that statement, and that implication is that free will cannot exist. The famed atheist and New York Times best-selling author Sam Harris wrote in his book Free Will, and I quote, "Free will is an illusion. Our wills are simply not of our own making." He further stated, "I cannot determine my wants. My mental life is given to me by the cosmos." Now, why is the lack of free will implied in the idea of godlessness or atheism? Now, here's why. Because atheism is founded on the belief system of materialism. Materialism is simply the idea that there is nothing super material, that there is no soul, that there is no mind, that there is no personality, that when you are talking about yourself, or I am talking about myself, then all we can mean by that is we are talking about the physical properties that compose the bodies that we can touch, see, taste, hear, or smell. You see, materialism says that if there really is something called a person that is inside of your body that is different from your body, well, then that would be a non-materialistic answer, and that simply cannot be the case. And that's why modern atheism is forced to say that when you do something, it's not really you doing it. It's your body forcing upon you whatever it is. And yet, they wouldn't even say it's your body forcing upon you. They would say ultimately, there's no real you. They would say there's nothing that composes your personality that decides what to do, where to go, how to act, how to behave. In June of 2015, evolutionary biologist Jerry Coyne delivered a lecture at the Imagine No Religion convention in Vancouver, Canada. And in that speech, he said, "Now many of you don't accept that. You don't believe that you are robots made out of meat, which is what I'm going to try to convince you of today." Now, did you catch that? Dr. Coyne said that to his atheistic audience, you don't believe that you are a meat robot, but the implication of atheism is that you are. And so he said, I'm going to try to convince you of that. Now, wait just a second. Try to convince you of that. Try to convince who? If those people in his audience cannot make their own decisions, if they cannot choose, if they do not have the free will to decide what to believe, to decide if they're going to stay through the lecture, to decide if they're going to change their minds, then whom, pray tell, is Jerry Coyne trying to convince? Is he trying to somehow alter the matter inside of the brains of each one of his audience so that they will conclude something even though they can't choose to conclude something different? You see, the fact that he is involved in reasoning with his audience belies the conclusion that they have free will to decide what to do. And yet he is then going to tell them that they are meat robots and that they don't have a free will. Why are you watching this video? If you are choosing to watch this video, in a very real sense, there has to be a God. Jerry Coyne went on to say that our behavior is absolutely determined by the laws of physics. And then he added, we are bowls of sugar, just very complicated bowls of sugar. Well, why in the world would any person want to come to the idea that we don't have free will? One of the reasons for that, in fact, I would suggest the primary reason, is to deflect human moral responsibility. You see, if you are just atoms banging around in a body, then what you do, well, you can't be held responsible for. It's not your fault that you lied, that you cheated, that you murdered, that you committed adultery with someone else's wife. That can't be chalked up to you because ultimately there is no you. Biologist Anthony Cashmore wrote, "From this simple analysis, surely it follows that individuals cannot logically be held responsible for their behavior." And then Coyne added, when he was speaking to his audience, almost all of you here don't believe in moral responsibility. Think about that. He went on to say, I don't consider myself morally responsible because I don't have a choice. Is that true, that you don't have a choice? Now, the problem with this line of reasoning is that simply every single one of us recognize that there is an us. We recognize that we are people. What Coyne and Cashmore and Sam Harris and other atheists are admitting is, hey, you're right. If there is no God, then free will cannot exist. But instead of saying free will does exist, so there must be a God, they then say, okay, free will doesn't exist. And what everyone thinks they're doing when they're making decisions is just an illusion. I find it very interesting that Sam Harris, at the end of his book on free will, thanks his wife for proofreading and looking into his material and helping him with that. Why? Why didn't he thank the table that didn't have a choice to sit there as it was holding up his computer? Why didn't he thank the computer that so effectively put the information to a disk and sent it through the internet? Why would he choose to thank his wife? Well, you and I both understand exactly why he would choose to thank his wife, because he chose to thank another person, and that person is not composed of the atoms that are banging around inside of that body, not composed solely of that. There is a Sam Harris, and there is a person who is watching this video right now who is deciding what to think about what we are discussing. No joke, really. If you chose to sit here and watch this video, then by all accounts, the atheistic accounts and those from a creationist, God has to exist. And atheism simply cannot be true if you chose to watch this video.